Have you all heard about this story out of Independence, Missouri? Now, I know there's so much craziness happening in this country, but this story, I really wanted to share this because, well, would you look at the time, we don't have very much more time left together. And this is indicative of how things have been going for a long time. Now, there's a lot of things we have to analyze in this story, because it's deep. Now, the story goes like this. I might not have all of the exact details, but this is as close to what actually occurred. They call that a reenactment of the situation. So if there are some minute details off or missing, don't fault me. I'm paraphrasing as close to reality as possible. Now, this happened in an Independence gas station in Independence, Missouri. Basically, a 23-year-old man walked into the gas station. Apparently, he was looking for a certain type of cigar. You know, the smoking type cigar. They sell them at convenience stores, gas stations, all across America. And this particular convenience store in Independence, Missouri did not carry that type or brand of cigar he was looking for. So this 23-year-old threw a temper tantrum towards the cashier. Started calling her all kinds of derogatory names and cursing her out. I mean, really abhorrent behavior, deplorable behavior. Now, apparently there was a 41-year-old firefighter inside the Independence gas station at the same time. And they exchanged some type of verbal altercation, the young man and the 41-year-old. And they got into arguing inside the convenience store. Now, the story goes that the firefighter was sticking up for the cashier because he didn't like how the 23-year-old was talking to her. And he wanted him to leave the convenience store. Now, we're going to pause here because there's two problems that we have to address before we continue. The first problem is very simplistic in nature. If they don't have an item in one store, you could go and check another one, right? I mean, I don't know how many gas stations they have in Independence, Missouri. I'll have to look that up. But I gotta think they have more than one. So this is a note on this. Why would you take out your frustration on the cashier? What, is the cashier on the loading docks putting out the supplies into their store? See, this is where it becomes really ridiculous. In the time that that 23-year-old was being a hothead inside the convenience store, he could have gotten back into his vehicle, because we know he had a vehicle, and he could have drove to another convenience store and searched for the cigar there. But instead, he wanted to give the cashier at that store an earful. He wanted to blame her for something that wasn't her fault. You listen to me. We don't have very much more time left. They're going to say this was the best production. Year one, it's whatever. Year two, we saved democracy. They're going to say year three, they're going to remember this for a long time. Am I the only one tripping out about that? If they don't have a supply or an item in one store, couldn't you just get back in your car and go to the next one? Let me take it a step further. When you treat people like that, and Americans, you treat people awful, do you think they're more likely to come into work or less likely? You know, every place in America, wherever you go, they have a staffing shortage. Anybody familiar with that? Anybody remember the guy who threw the Dairy Queen shake at the 16-year-old girl because apparently she added peanuts? She made a mistake. He used racial slurs. I think she was 16 working in Dairy Queen. That probably was her first job. Maybe she did put peanuts in it. And maybe it did cause a severe allergy to his child. But you have to think, people make mistakes. Unless she did it intentional or he knew she did it intentionally, it's a mistake. And she said it was a mistake. She might not even have been the one that actually made the shake. He didn't know. But they had to restrain the door as he tried to barge in. You remember. All across America, people are saying they're being harassed by customers. Whenever they tell them an item is out of stock, they're going crazy. See, this is what happens when you're conditioned to always having what you want. Translation, consumerism. I have to have this. I have to have more. And then there's no more. But there was no more in that particular store. It could have been in another store right down the street. But yet, in the time that he could have taken to investigate that matter, he wanted to take out his frustration on a person who had nothing to do with not having the item. Thanksgiving just passed. Do you know any Americans who are thankful for anything? I don't. You know, I have a theory. You can call it a conspiracy theory. But it goes like this. If you're not grateful for what you do have, you could end up losing that. Americans are not grateful anymore. I don't know if they ever would. But they're certainly not now. And I think that's why we're losing. I think that's why we're going to lose. We're not grateful. You know, you can say thank you to somebody if they do you a service. How rude. I see people all the time. They don't even say thank you anymore. All manners and norms and expectations have gone out the window. And then people say, I'm not sick. I should certainly hope something is wrong with you. Because if that's you on normal, no wonder everybody wants America to go first. Story for a different time. Am I missing something? And the firefighter, let's examine that. Look, I get you wanting to stick up for the cashier, but in a time period that I'm living in and looking at, I don't know if I would have said shit. I probably would have got on my cell phone and contacted law enforcement. Now, rumor has it, and I don't know if this is true or not, that the firefighter inside the store saw the 23-year-old with a weapon on it. So he knew he was armed. Now put that into the equation. If you know somebody is armed with a weapon, a gun, are you really going to get into an argument with someone who has a gun? And they're not even arguing with you. You interject into another argument. Now, if he had pulled the gun out on the cashier, that's a different story. You're moving like Bruce Lee, stealthily from behind, and you tackle. You knock the gun out the hand. You restrain him into the police arrival. You're a hero. But none of that happened in this story. The individual was just a hothead. He said some offensive things to the female cashier. He hurt her feelings. But saying offensive things is not a crime. If it were, a lot of people would be in prison tonight. There's a lot of offensive things said on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So whilst he said some horrible things, he didn't break any laws. To my knowledge, he didn't threaten bodily harm. He was very frustrated they didn't have the cigar, the brand he wanted. And he threw a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old baby. You can see that happening all across America. I call it the Great American Meltdown. Karens running amok on every street in America. Did you see the Karen that bugged Terrell Owens backing up out of his driveway to check his mail? I'm telling you, Americans are melting down. Everybody's enjoying watching this shit. Everybody's enjoying this shit. Even the people enjoying it saying they can't believe it's this bad. I said, believe it, it's bad. And this is just what they're reporting. You can imagine all the shit they're not reporting. So they get into some type of verbal altercation in the convenience store. And now here's where it gets really interesting. They go outside the convenience store. And now they're outside. They're away from the situation. Now, young people, listen to this. This is very important. They're away from the original environment that created the hostility. Remember, he wanted a cigar, and they didn't have it. He blew up on the cashier because they didn't have the cigar. Now they're outside of that situation. Technically, now that you have a change of scenery, you can change the energy. Listen to what I'm saying. You can change the energy. They did change the energy, but for the worse. Now they went outside and started getting into a physical fight, whereas when they were inside, it was verbal. They went outside and got into a physical fight. And it wasn't a real fight, in fact, because the 41-year-old was a firefighter from Kansas City. And this 23-year-old is not a fighter. So the 41-year-old firefighter in the video, the surveillance footage from the convenience store, he's got the 23-year-old in a chokehold. He's defenseless, according to an eyewitness, the 23-year-old. Now, at this point, it's over, right? At this point, you've subdued the individual who was acting a jerk. It's over. But he's choking the 23-year-old out at this point. He's not letting up. Now the eyewitness is like, wait a minute. Something's wrong here. The individual is defenseless at this point. And the 41-year-old is choking him out to the point where the eyewitness said that the individual he was choking out was starting to turn purple. Now, as you're choking someone out, you can see that they're changing colors. At that point, think about what the situation merited. And is this de-escalation or severe escalation? Remember, the initial situation was they didn't have a cigar and he blew up on the cashier. Now we have it to the point where it's almost a life or death situation. Does that situation merit what was happening? Absolutely not. Let me tell you what I think happened. The negative energy of the young man who was berating the cashier transferred into the 41-year-old. He started getting upset that he was upset and that she was upset. And then they both continued escalating. Nobody tried to de-escalate. That's the key there. Nobody tried to de-escalate. Yet, there's more to the story. And so he's in a chokehold. And in the video, they don't want to say it in the story, but in the video, you can clearly tell that he's repeatedly hitting the 23-year-old's head into the cement. They're on a street. This is a parking lot. And he's repeatedly pounding the 23-year-old's head into the concrete. This is what we call excessive force. And it's not warranted in this situation. He didn't try to rob the store. He didn't physically assault the cashier. It was emotional and verbal abuse. Once he was outside that store, they could have locked the door and contacted law enforcement if they felt threatened. Instead, he went outside and he wanted to play MMA. For those of you who don't know, it's mixed martial arts. This 41-year-old is acting like he's Hulk Hogan now. Both of them have been trapped by negative energy. Now you know this story is not going to end well. Like many stories are not ending well in America. Most likely how the final story is not going to end well for America. Here's where it gets interesting. The 23-year-old has a girlfriend in the car. And I don't know if she's aware of what took place in the convenience store. So she sees her boyfriend being choked out. Literally being killed. And the eyewitness said that the 41-year-old firefighter said, "I'm killing you," quote, end quote. So the girlfriend has a gun. And she's steadily repeating to the 41-year-old to get off of him. You're killing him. You're hurting him. Stop it. And the firefighter is just enjoying it. He's been completely hijacked to the point where he was going to kill him. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Somebody was going to meet the Grim Reaper that night. Could have been multiple people. But somebody was going to have a dinner date with the Grim Reaper. Because everybody's energy had been hijacked. It was negative. And when you're negative, you cannot see positive. America, you've been negative for so long. You can't see any positive anymore. We talked about that a little bit. No de-escalation. Now, you know what else, before we get to how the story ends, you know what else we're seeing here? We're seeing toxic masculinity. Oh yes, we saw it at the beginning of the story, where he's screaming at the cashier, verbally abusing her. Do women become irate? Of course they do. Do women fight? Of course they do. But I've never really seen a woman choke out another woman because a woman was offensive towards a man. Verbally abused a man. No, I've never seen that. To the point where the other woman wanted to kill the woman. No, I've never seen that. No. If anybody has video footage of such a thing, Send it our way. Now, somebody is going to talk about Shaquilla Robinson. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it. That needs to be discussed. Back to this. Two negative individuals now, completely hijacked. Over a cigar. Think about what this is really the root cause of the whole altercation to begin with. From the verbal onslaught of the cashier to the argument inside the convenience store, it's about not having a cigar. Hello, the end of the story, for those of you who want to cheat and skip ahead, the end of the story is the firefighter, the 41-year-old, who's choking the life out of the 23-year-old, is shot by the girlfriend after she repeatedly asks him to get off of her boyfriend. Somebody died over a cigar not being in a convenience store in Independence, Missouri. Who doesn't think it's over for the Americans at this point? I'm not even going to raise my hand and not say so. Really, somebody met the Grim Reaper. And the Grim Reaper said, "Why are you here?" And they said, "Over a cigar." Grim Reaper is like, "Oh my goodness. It's getting worse and worse by the day. You get into an argument at a dice game. I don't even know if it was an argument at the dice game. Did you all hear about Takeoff the rapper? He got killed at a dice game. He got killed over nothing, just like this firefighter lost his life over nothing. You all are misbehaving like a bunch of savages and even. Look, I thought I was bad. First place to the Americans. You're going first. I'm telling you. You're taking first place. A cigar. Do you know how many gas stations carry cigars? Convenience stores. Quick marts. And somebody lost their life over a cigar not being in stock. You don't think that's a problem, Americans? You don't think you have a problem? See, this is first step to recovery, is admitting that you have an issue. Now, Missouri said they're not going to charge the girlfriend because it's self-defense. The castle doctrine. And basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but it goes something like this. If you feel your life is in harm's way, and someone, a third party member, is also at risk of losing their life, you can use deadly force to defend yourself and a third party person. That's the Missouri law. And this case fits squarely into it. Now, go back to the de-escalation part. This is important. Because we acknowledge the men weren't trying to de-escalate the situation. But the girlfriend who got out of the car, she actually was trying to de-escalate. She didn't just get out and shoot. Bang. She repeatedly repeatedly tried to get him off of it. She even hit him several times. And it was like he didn't even notice he was being hit by another person. He was just so enraged with hatred. He was gone. He was gone before she shot him. Oh, now I'm telling you something that you might not have heard before. He was gone. You go and you look at George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. Chauvin is killing George Floyd. The knee on the neck. He's killing him. But you look at Chauvin, he's gone. He's not there. George is not there either, but Chauvin is not there. You can get hijacked. And you can go. I mean, you can disappear your whole soul. When you're negative. It's possible. That's why we say positive energy all the time. Positive energy. Because even when you're negative, if you remain positive, you can come back. You gotta try to remain positive. Keep calm and carry on. Neither one of them kept calm. The eyewitness said that this 23-year-old was going to get killed had she not shot him. The firefighter choking him out. So going back to what I said earlier, the Grim Reaper was going to meet someone that night in Independence, Missouri. Another point that I want to extract from this. Men don't listen when women try to de-escalate the situation. Yes, I saw that. Now come on, be honest about this. When she was emotional, granted, but she was trying to de-escalate the situation. She was the first person to enter who tried to de-escalate the situation. And men, they didn't listen. Oh, now, community members said that this firefighter had a wife and children. So shouldn't he have thought about his wife and children? Shouldn't he have thought about not escalating this situation to that situation? And when somebody is trying to de-escalate, shouldn't he automatically go back to that? Look, I don't want to theorize too much. But if you see somebody asking you to stop something, and you continue, that's classical signs of an abuser. It wasn't like he didn't hear her say, stop, get off of him, you're killing him. It wasn't like he wasn't speaking. It wasn't like he didn't know what he was doing. I was looking at all of that and thinking that as it was occurring. I was like, this individual Just like the 23-year-old has severe anger issues. Now let's get into that. Men have anger issues. You're seeing it in the society. They're out of control. They're going to be in control very soon. I'm not going to say what's going to come along to put them in control, but they're going to be in control. Six feet under, that is. Yeah, a lot of men are getting ready to meet the Grim Reaper. They're going to die in their rage, like that firefighter did. Derek Chauvin threw away his life for nothing. The McMichaels. They're going to die in their rage. You cannot have all that hatred and negative energy in you. It's going to destroy you. I said this a long time ago. I said these men, I told young men, stay away from this. Stay away from hatred and anger. It's not good for you. Bob Marley said that. No strife. Relax, man. But people didn't understand. They said, oh, it's some kind of hippie, marijuana-induced, psychedelic bullshit. You remember Flower Power, Groovy Band. Peace. Love. Flower Power. Men said that was bullshit. It wasn't negative enough. It wasn't violent enough. You can't be a savage and love the planet. You gotta cut down all the trees and kill off all the animals. And then think the planet is gonna do good and great things for you. Yeah, it'll send a great flood and flood you out. And then we'll start over again. I don't know. They're trying to kill up all the animals. The animals are like, we're sick of this shit. They want to fight back. And they're fighting back really hard now. I hope they win. Men are destructive to nature, not just to each other. You saw what was happening in the Independence parking lot. No, they're destructive to nature too. Mark my words, you're going to wake up and you're going to hear about a Category 6 storm. They say there's no such thing as a Category 6 storm. You're going to hear about it very soon. And then Category 7. And then 8. And if you're still around for 9, well, you probably wish you had gone with 8. No, things have to go back into balance. And you can see who's out of balance right now. It's clear and evident. talk about something that's not politically correct, men are on some bullshit. And they don't need to be on no more shit. That's what Mother Nature is saying. And I concur. The animals concur. Everything concurs. So you're about to find out, baby boo. You're about to find out. You're going to go first, America. America first. Independence. Independence, Missouri. Two independent nuts. Two independent angry men. Not wanting to listen to women. Tuning out their voice of reason. Of de-escalation. You know, both of those bozos could have been saved if they had to listen to the woman. It wasn't like she had bad intentions. She was just telling them to stop killing her boyfriend. And you can go home now. Because you nearly killed him. It wasn't like she was going to do something nefarious. She had to make a split-second choice. And a lot of people have been calling up the county DA and prosecutor's office, leaving racist and sexist voice messages. But they're being disingenuous, because what would they have done in that situation? Possibly, quite possibly the same exact thing. Look, they say unless you're in somebody else's shoes, don't judge. I do judge from time to time, and I'm not in certain folks' shoes. But that's when it's a clear picture. This is not so clear. He's a hero one minute and a villain the next. Because what he did inside the convenience store was noble. Sure, they got into an argument, but that's not illegal. It should have ended at that. Ask yourself, how does a verbal argument end up becoming an MMA fight? Now we've established anger. But anger is easy to ascertain in this picture. There's something that's not easy to ascertain. Because the anger is coming towards the cashier by the 23-year-old. And the firefighter is angry that he's treating the cashier like this. So that's the obvious, the anger. But there's something invisible. The invisible enemy. See, we can see things that you cannot see. There's something invisible here. What is it? It's hatred. It's hatred. I can see you being angry at someone who's being belligerent. But me being angry at someone does not result in physical violence towards them. Come on, we've all been there. We've all gotten angry at someone. But we haven't necessarily all punched someone that we're angry at. That's a step up in the aggression scale, correct? That denotes a hatred. Now we're talking about something. Now we're getting to the root cause. See, we have to do these things. This is how we learn. Where is this hatred coming from, though? Can anger just transform into hatred? Yes. In this situation, I don't surmise that is what happened. There's some key reasons why I wouldn't surmise that happened. One, they walk out of the store without laying a hand on each other. Now, if anger had transposed into hate, they would have physically gotten into an altercation inside the store, in front of the cashier. They were just simply angry there. So what happened between going outside the store that led to the hatred? A change of scenery. You know, I said it and nobody picked up on it the first time. A change of scenery can lead to de-escalation, or it can lead to total escalation. It depends on what type of energy the individual chooses. They're no longer in the store. They could have both chosen to walk away. But the 41-year-old firefighter chose to immediately begin wrestling the individual to the ground. It was like he had something to prove, right? But for who? Who is he proving this for? He's not in front of the cashier anymore, so she's not seeing this. She doesn't know that they're outside fighting in the parking lot. She just saw them go outside and argue. So maybe she thinks they're outside arguing. Maybe she thinks they're gone. She doesn't know. So what is this performance for? Who is this for? It's for the individual themselves. You know, when an individual is full of hatred, that's on them. I used to tell people, and it's still true, you can hate somebody and it does nothing to the person you hate. The only thing it does is it eats up on you, your insides. You look at some of these haters nowadays. They don't look good, do they? They don't look well. They look sick. You can clearly tell a hater from someone who's not a hater. The haters all look sick, don't they? Pale, tired. They lash out of nowhere. They're sounding ridiculous. Can you see it? We can. So he's consumed by hate now, this firefighter. And the 23-year-old, where he was consumed by anger, he's now not even practically breathing. He's self-defenseless. He's dying, literally. The match is over. Even if he had gotten off of him when the girlfriend said this, and this was after the fight had been going on for a long time. They said apparently they had been fighting in the parking lot for 10 minutes. And most of the time, the firefighter had him in a headlock, pounding his head in the concrete. Can you imagine 10 minutes arguing about a cigar not being in the store? Hello, am I the only one that thinks Americans don't have anything better to do? You're arguing about not having a cigar in a convenience store for 10 minutes? Damn, I want to make every second of this count. I'm not going to spend any time arguing with anyone in these last few days we have together. Let alone spend 10 minutes talking about it. Think about that. These two are arguing for 10 minutes over a cigar. Remember, go back to what this is about. The cigar is not in stock in this convenience store. That's what all of this whole altercation is about, a cigar. And you're wasting 10 minutes of your precious time MMA fighting about a cigar. I can only imagine the Grim Reaper is laughing at this as he's watching. I don't even think that is funny. I don't even know how to summarize that. Like, the light bulb is not going off in anybody's head at that point. Like, hey, we're arguing over a cigar. It's not that big of a deal. Like, does that thought even cross their minds? I don't think it does. Independence, Missouri. Look this up. This is a true story. It happened this year. I'm not talking about a cold case that happened 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic. No, I'm talking about this year. About a couple of weeks ago. That's how you can tell it's over. If you really want to know. There's signs for those who can read and are wise. A cigar. And it was probably one of those cheap $15 cigars that they didn't have at that convenience store. I'm telling you. Would you want to go back into the office and have to deal with that kind of bullshit? They're like, people didn't return back to work. I wonder why. One, they're burned out. Come on now. Capitalism, you burned everybody out. Marx was right. I know you hate admitting it, but Marx was right. You burned everybody out. That's step one. Step 2 is stressful as fuck. You don't make it easy for the people who do go in. You're ungrateful. You don't say thank you. You're unappreciative of what they do have. So you stress everybody else. Step 2. Step 3. People don't give a shit anymore. Hey, when you know it's over, it's over. It's hard motivating people when they didn't know it was over. Forget trying to motivate people when they know it's over. Staffing shortages. No. People are tired of being mistreated, bullied. America, you're a bully nation. Americans, you are bullies. I can finally say it. We might as well be honest. There's not much time left. Everybody, you can put in your grievance in the hat. Who do you want to blame? Everybody's going to have a different group, a different person, a different entity, a different monster they want to blame. All the ancients said that was going to happen too. They'll blame every deity under the sun and cast every stone except for their own. All the ancients used to say this. I said, I don't know what that means. Now I do. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till December. Because they got 31 days. They know that. Watch the blame game begin. It's already started. It's the Jews. Don't you know it's the Jews? Have you heard the news? The Jews are being blamed again. It's not like that hasn't happened before. And then somebody is going to blame the Muslims, the Christians. Then somebody is going to blame the Mexicans, the blacks, the whites. Nobody's going to blame themselves though. Who's to blame in Independence, Missouri that night? Who wants to blame anyone for that? They wanted to blame the cashier for not having the cigar, the 23-year-old. Now, is it her fault that they didn't have that cigar? No. She had nothing to do with whether they had an item or not. She gets paid to stand behind that register. Or else there's no convenience store and you can't buy anything. See, that's where the grateful part comes in. There was a band, the Grateful Dead. If there's no cashier, you can't go in there and buy a Snicker. You can't buy a soda. You can't buy Coors Light. You can't buy a condom. You can't buy potato chips. If there's no cashier, it's not open. Now everybody wants to complain about the store hours closing early. Stores just closing because of short staffing. Everybody wants to complain about the long wait times. But you weren't grateful when the people were in there. Forgive me, I'm getting a little choked up. No, I'm not. I'm bullshitting. Just like you're going to start to see bullshit from the Americans. December 1st, mark my words. On your mark, get set, go. You're going to hear all types of bullshit. Don't believe any of it. Because, did you see the Washington Post photo? See, this is important. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's important. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, he said, I was a curious youth. Now you look at that photo, and for me, I get a dark aura around it. What's you all's general read of that? Do you get a positive view or a negative view? They really picked a good photo. Because I can believe Jerry Jones was curious. But that photo is dark and insidious. You see the young man with the cigar hanging out of his mouth? The cigarette? Doesn't he look mean? Doesn't he look violent? Doesn't he look angry? He looks like he has a lot of hate in him. That's what we were watching in Independence, Missouri. Hatred. Pure hatred. I said it. Americans hate Americans. I said, what? Nobody has ever said this before. I said, really? No shit, Sherlock. Nobody ever comes along and tells Americans the truth. You go and you look at Independence, Missouri. Pure hatred. Anger, yes, and understandable. Hatred, no. Over a cigar, come on. No. That hatred was there. In my opinion, as a result of that 41-year-old not seeing that 23-year-old as a human. To try to snuff out the life of another person. You can't see them as being human. He was acting in an inhuman fashion at that point, trying to murder someone. And the girlfriend recognized that, and that's why she was trying to de-escalate and call him back. But there was no getting him back, was there? People say he was a hero and a nice person, and that might be true. Or that could be what they knew of him. Now remember, this is important. Everything is, but this is important. Just because someone sees you or knows you in one capacity doesn't mean they know you in every capacity. People don't even know themselves, let alone anyone else. That's why we're going to talk about friendship and Shaquilla Robinson. We're going to talk about what really happened. So when people say, oh, he did these heroic things, that might be true. But on that night in question, there was only villains present. He wasn't a hero outside that convenience store trying to kill someone over a verbal altercation with a cashier. He wasn't being heroic. Now, I know Americans are in the business of twisting and spinning things. To the point of absurdity at this point. Like George Floyd didn't really die of a knee to his neck. It was a fentanyl overdose. I mean, they're really into absurdity at this point. Kyle Rittenhouse defended himself by getting in a car with people who were ex-military and armed and driving to his friend's house to steal a weapon. Anybody know any medics that steal weapons and go into hostile situations and end up murdering 2 people? Anybody know medics that do that? Is that a common thing? I thought medics save lives. Apparently they take them in America too. And they said that was self-defense. Way out, I'm telling you. They gave Elizabeth Holmes 11 3/4 years in federal prison for defrauding investors of money. Has anybody heard of Glorify? It's a bank, a conservative bank. It opened just this year, in September. Candace Owens and George Farmer, the Bonnie and Clyde of con artistry. They started a conservative bank for gun owners, Christian Bible readers, and the list goes on. God-fearing patriots. They open a bank. We'll give you a line of credit if you have a gun, if you're Christian, if you're unbanked by the woke financial institutions. We'll give you a checking and savings account. I'm not making this up. You listen. It all ties together here. They raised millions of dollars for this bank, and it opened in September, and it's closed. And we're at the end of November. Now you do the math. What bank opens and closes in less than 60 days? That's not a scam to begin with. They say if you're an investor or you had a checking or savings account or a credit card, you can try to get your money back. You mean Ye's money that he paid George Farmer to own Parler? George is going to come off of some of those millions of dollars? No, they're going to use that money to pay the Lamborghinis. Now, if Elizabeth Holmes can get 11 and a half years in prison, Shouldn't Candace Owens be in prison with George Farmer? See, this is where there's no consistency. Everybody just sees the hypocrisy and the insanity. The contradictions. So people are tired now. They don't give a shit. They're burned out. Underappreciated, and they're bullied. Can't stress that one enough. You bully people, Americans. You reap what you sow. Now, who was the victor in Independence, Missouri? Who won? Who won? Because Americans are all about winning, right? Who won in that whole affair? You now have a widow. The 23-year-old is in prison. And the young lady who tried to de-escalate the situation, who wasn't involved in the argument, is being bullied verbally, online, in the media, through the prosecutor's office. And she was the only one that tried to de-escalate the entire situation. She was the only one that was acting rationally that night. In order for her to save a life, she had to take one. And everybody is being judgmental about that decision. But really, what would they have done? Would they have stood there and watched someone be murdered? Or would they have self-defended another individual and saved one person's life who was being murdered? And the individual who was being murdered had not committed any crime. So you can't say, oh, she saved a criminal. He committed no crime. Verbal abuse is toxic, but it's not criminal. So this, I was thinking, I'm glad I was not there. Because that's really a difficult dilemma and situation. Remove race and gender. I know that's difficult for Americans to do. But remove those two factors. One person is killing another. And you're witnessing it. You're seeing it. You're asking for them to stop doing it. And they're completely ignoring you and continuing to do it. Another eyewitness corroborates your story. Says that the individual was defenseless, turning purple. And said they heard the 41-year-old, whilst he had the 23-year-old in the chokehold, say, I'm killing you. This is not a good scenario or situation to be placed in, even if you don't know what's going on, which no indication proves that the girlfriend did. She wasn't in the convenience store. She didn't know they didn't have the cigar. She didn't hear the argument or how he mistreated the cashier. All she sees is this argument outside, so her perspective is different. See, that's why different vantage points are important in this story. The cashier doesn't know what's going on outside. The eyewitness is away from the scene but can hear it close enough to collaborate the story. When I heard this happen, I said, this is a hell of a story. I showed it to a couple of people. Really, really smart. They said, oh boy. I said, what do you see? They just said trouble. That's what I see too, trouble. Trouble is on the horizon, Americans. Trouble. Trouble. If you cannot control your anger, you're going to meet with bad consequences. And a lot of people are going to meet with bad consequences very soon. A lot of people. And America as a nation, it has an anger issue. And it's going to meet with some severe consequences. Look, we don't have much time together. And I figured I'd talk about what we're seeing. We'd analyze it and share it in the hopes that perhaps in the future someone else will do better. They'll learn from our mistakes. This is chronicalizing the end of a republic. People say, what is this? This is chronicalizing the end of something. But every ending has a beginning too. Three lives ruined because of toxic masculinity, anger, and hatred. This nation has been ruined because of those things as well. And women are trying to stop you from doing it. And you're not listening. Typical. Not surprising. You all get back to me before the end of December. And tell me what you see in that photo from 1957. And we will make America great again. You know, you hear that shit. I say, give me a time and a day when it was great. And for who? Who was it great for in 1957? PBS, you air a documentary showing what it was like living in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. We don't have that much time left. We should see it. Because these bullshitters have convinced themselves that everything was honky-dory in 1957. I want to see if that's true. I'm curious. Aren't you curious? This is the end anyway. Aren't you curious if this story that they've been telling us for so long is true? Huh? I mean, if you're going to lie to us for centuries, shouldn't we know in the very end whether your story, can we collaborate your story? Is it true? Was America a nice country in 1957? We've only got a little time left together. We should know. And if America was a nice country in 1957, it's going to come as news to everyone. Were they welcoming the students? Was it a parade? If so, why was the National Guard there? Why did United States Marshals 3 years later escort Ruby Bridges into the elementary school? This is 1960, 3 years after 1957, for those who can't do math. 1963, a church gets bombed by the Ku Klux Klan, killing 4 little black girls in the basement. So we're at 1963 and it doesn't look too nice. We've only got a few more days left to go. So Americans, you tell yourself whatever bullshit you need to tell yourself in those last few days. We're going first. Everybody wanted to go America first. We're making America great again. Oh yeah, it's going to be great. It was great, right? Independence, Missouri. Check it out. What do you see? So there's no cigar. Get this, there's no cigar in the convenience store. Now, if I go into a store and they don't have the item I'm looking for, I'll look at the newspaper, talk with the cashier, how things going. Oh, you know. And then I'll say, have a nice day, and walk out. On to the next place. You know, kindness matters. Kindness is free. You don't have to pay for kindness. Kindness matters. That's true. Nobody was kind in Independence, Missouri that day. He wasn't kind to the cashier. He was being a jerk. Throwing a temper tantrum. Like a petulant little chap. And then the 41-year-old firefighter, he starts arguing with him. And they get outside the store. It was a change of scenery. And they started wrestling with each other. And the girlfriend is saying, get off of him. You're killing me. gotta really look at independence Missouri. Really analyze what we're seeing.